The day a congresswoman exposed Melania Trump live on TV. The moment that changed everything. Picture this. A routine political talk show for guests, one moderator, and millions of unsuspecting viewers tuning in for their evening news. Nobody expected what was about to unfold. Nobody knew they were about to witness one of the most jaw-dropping political confrontations in modern history. Seated third from the left was Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, calm, composed, wearing a navy blazer. For 20 minutes, she barely spoke. She listened, took notes, waited. But when the conversation turned to ethics and politics, something shifted in her eyes. The camera panned to Melania Trump, elegant and poised as always, deflecting tough questions with practiced charm. The audience had seen this dance before. But Jasmine leaned forward, not dramatically, just enough to send a message. "I'm ready. Since we're talking about ethics," Jasmine said, her voice smooth but firm, "let's stop pretending some people get a free pass just because of who they married." The panel went silent. Melania's head tilted slightly. "I'm sorry, was that directed at me?" Jasmine didn't flinch. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick folder. Calmly, methodically, she began laying out photocopied documents across the table. "These are transaction logs, offshore account filings, and reports from an abandoned investigation in upstate New York," she said, "all tied to shell companies used in the late 2000s. And every single one has a connection to your name." You could hear a pin drop. The backstory, 3 days earlier. But before we dive into that explosive moment, we need to understand what led Jasmine to this point. 3 days before the show, she sat in a quiet diner outside Fort Worth with her chief of staff, Kenny Rose. "This isn't just political," Kenny warned, leaning across the table. "You're talking about Melania Trump. They're going to come after you hard." Jasmine stirred her coffee, but didn't drink it. Let them. People need to stop pretending she was just an accessory. See, Jasmine Crockett wasn't your typical politician. A black woman from the south side of Dallas with no family money, no legacy name, just grit and an unshakable belief in justice. She'd fought her way through law school, spent years as a public defender, and made it to Congress on the backs of grassroots supporters who believed in her fire. "I'm not trying to start a fire," she told Kenny. "I'm trying to show people it's already burning." That night, alone in her apartment, Jasmine went through every document again. Reports from an abandoned fraud case in Syracuse. Signatures from Melania's alleged European ventures with dates that didn't match. Wire transfers to shell companies in the British Virgin Islands, dated just before Trump's presidential campaign began. She didn't have the whole picture, but she had enough pieces to see what had been hidden. The investigation nobody wanted. Here's what Jasmine discovered. For years, there have been whispers about Melania's past. Not the fairy tale ride from Slovenia to First Lady, but the gaps in between. Her intern, Troy, had been the first to notice inconsistencies in Melania's early modeling and business records. She signed off on a patent application in Zurich in '98, Troy told her. Problem is, she claimed in interviews she was already in the U.S. full-time by then. The deeper they dug, the more suspicious it became. 3 separate companies tied to her name that were never disclosed. A closed lawsuit in Pennsylvania under the name Mess Holdings with allegations of wire fraud, sealed by a judge under national interest. Then came the smoking gun, a case file from Syracuse, New York, dated June 17, 2011. It referenced a woman named McNouse, a known alias of Melania before she changed her name spelling. The file outlined a federal inquiry into suspected financial funneling schemes involving real estate purchases and offshore payments. The key witness? A Slovenian-born accountant named Lydia, who had been cooperating with the IRS. 2 weeks after the memo was filed, she vanished. Apartment cleared out overnight. No passport records, no flight data. The case was quietly closed due to insufficient supporting testimony. Someone made it disappear. The retired paralegal who gave Jasmine the file explained. It wasn't supposed to vanish, but someone made it disappear. The confrontation. Back to that studio in Connecticut. As Jasmine laid out her evidence, the host, Felix Roman, sat frozen. 20 years of hosting political shows, and he'd never seen anything like this. "You're saying Melania Trump was connected to financial misconduct?" he asked, trying to regain control. "I'm saying there were financial structures tied to her name," Jasmine replied, flipping through her folder. "Structures that moved money through New York, Pennsylvania, and Delaware under companies that didn't exist past a single tax season." Melania's hands gripped her chair tighter. Her PR assistant, sitting off camera, shifted nervously. "These are serious allegations," Felix pressed. "Have they been verified?" "Most of them have been ignored," Jasmine said, never raising her voice. "But they were never hidden. You just had to look. And someone finally did." That line, "you just had to look," was clipped and shared online before the segment even ended. Melania finally spoke. "This is political theater. I'm not going to dignify these lies with a response." Jasmine met her eyes for the first time. "If they're lies, you should welcome an investigation." Silence. Even the studio lighting felt hotter. The explosion. Within hours, the internet exploded. The clip of Jasmine calmly saying, "If they're lies, you should welcome an investigation," went viral. 11 million views in the first day. Teenagers on TikTok were breaking down the exchange like a sports replay. Legal analysts did frame-by-frame analysis. But the real impact came from the people reaching out. A retired IRS investigator texted Jasmine, "You said what most of us were too afraid to. I'm proud of you." Anonymous emails started flooding in with more evidence. Bank records, transaction logs, testimonies from people who'd worked with Melania's early business ventures. One email contained wire transfer records to the Cayman Islands that Jasmine had never seen before. The backlash. Of course, the machine pushed back hard. Melania's legal team issued threatening statements. Right-wing commentators claimed Jasmine forged documents. Fox News spun it as a racist attack from an angry black woman. Anonymous threats poured in. Videos of Jasmine walking to her car, taken from across the street. Emails saying she'd disappeared just like the last one. Security was tightened. Some colleagues started avoiding eye contact in the halls. But Jasmine didn't back down. When a senior House member came to her office suggesting she let it rest, she refused. When lobbyists offered money to soften her position, she ignored them. "Fear is their currency," she told Kenny, "and I refuse to buy in." The congressional hearing. 19 days after that viral moment, public pressure forced a formal congressional hearing. The room was packed with cameras, reporters, and Americans hungry for answers. Jasmine wore a plain dark blazer. No statement jewelry. No bright colors, just focus. When given the floor, she didn't thank anyone or make pleasantries. She got straight to the point. "Everything I presented was based on documentation obtained through legal channels," she began. "This isn't about politics. It's about patterns that suggest misuse of trust, power, and silence." She paused, then delivered a line that would define her legacy. If these patterns were tied to anyone else, anyone without that last name, this rule would have been full years ago. Halfway through the hearing, something unexpected happened. A former financial compliance officer stood up in the gallery and handed over invoices tied to a charity Melania had publicly supported. None of the funds ever reached their stated beneficiaries. "This is what happens when you crack the door open," Jasmine said, reviewing the new documents. People finally come forward. The ripple effect. Melania never appeared at the hearing. She never gave an interview. Just cold, disconnected statements about personal attacks and maintaining integrity. The contrast with Jasmine's direct, fearless testimony was stark. More whistleblowers emerged. Former attorneys, bank analysts, even a Slovenian journalist who'd been blacklisted for investigating Melania's early financial dealings. They'd all stayed quiet for years, but Jasmine's courage gave them permission to speak. Students began studying the hearing in media literacy classes. Activist groups used her case as a template for transparency legislation. Other lawmakers quietly started asking deeper questions about financial disclosures. The real victory. 2 weeks after the hearing, Jasmine stood on her office balcony in Arlington, Texas, watching the sunset. Her inbox was still full of reporters and investigators asking for more. But for the first time in over a month, the noise felt manageable. Kenny joined her with updates. more subpoenas issued, committees reviewing charity files. But Jasmine was thinking about something bigger. "You know what?" she said. "I keep thinking about the people who told me to leave it alone, that I'd ruin my career if I opened my mouth." The truth was, this had never been about destroying Melania Trump. It was about breaking the illusion that if someone was rich enough, polished enough, or quiet enough, they didn't have to answer for their past. That illusion was gone now. The message. One letter stuck with Jasmine more than any headline. From someone in Iowa. "I used to believe the system couldn't be challenged, that people like me didn't matter. But watching you stand up with facts in your hand and fire in your voice made me believe again." When people ask about the day Jasmine Crockett challenged Melania Trump on live television, it's not just a story about scandal or politics. It's about what happens when one person with nothing to gain and everything to risk chooses to tell the truth anyway. Because here's the thing. Silence may protect the powerful, but courage exposes what power tries to hide. And sometimes the biggest victory isn't winning in court. It's simply refusing to be quiet. The moment we stop asking questions is the moment we give our power away. And if you believe the truth still matters, then remember Jasmine Crockett's words. You just had to look, and someone finally did. The question is, what will you choose to look at next?